So the thing that most people talk to me about is basically starting a business. And what I hear time and again is also what pisses me off. It's when they say, I don't have time to build a business. And I'm just thinking to myself, it's not that you don't have the time. It's just that you don't think it's a priority. To a fair degree, I get it because I used to think the same earlier. Like back when I was working in consulting at Deloitte, my days looked insane. On an average 12-hour work days, back-to-back calls, leading a team, 2 laptops, and 0 free time. And so if there was ever someone who had every excuse to not build something on the side, it was this guy. And here's the honest truth that most people don't want to hear. Saying you don't have time is just another excuse. Because in the middle of all that chaos that I went through, I actually built a profitable business. It was actually my first business. And I want to walk you through exactly how I did it. For those of you who don't know me and wondering why should I even listen to this guy, well, my name is Akash Damodaran and I've founded 4 companies, everything from F&B, food and beverage to media to consulting, and I've scaled them while holding down demanding day jobs. And I'm not saying this to flex, but because I know what it feels like to be stuck in the 9 to 5, feeling like you just don't have enough time or energy left to build something of your own that's truly yours. And so I want to show you through my own story that it's not just possible, it's doable, even if you're working long hours at a place like Deloitte. Because whether you think you can or you think you can't, you are right. If you're on the fence and you want to start something of your own, but you're not really sure how to go about it, then I've actually put together a resource that's going to help you. It's basically 15 steps in 15 days to help you build a profitable business or a second income source, even if you're employed. It's been a while since I started publishing this and the feedback has been overwhelmingly positive. And so I'd recommend checking it out. You can subscribe by hitting the first link in the description below. It's completely free and you can unsubscribe anytime you want. But I'm fairly certain that you're going to get through the entire 15-day course or the entire 15-day email set and think, wow, that's a whole lot that he's unpacked over the course of 15 days. So yeah, check it out and let me know what you think. So story time. At Deloitte, it was basically consulting chaos 24/7. At 9:30 a.m., I had my stand-up call. At 10:30 a.m., another call. Post lunch, about at least 3 hours of calls stacked one after another. And I think at the end of the day, around 6:30 p.m., I had a sync with my onshore clients. And then my favorite part, those last minute urgent fires that dropped at 7:45 p.m. By the time I'd log off, it'd be anywhere from 7 to 9 p.m. And this was not just one day, one-off days. It was basically every single day. So now you tell me, in that kind of schedule, when do you really build a startup? And again, it's so easy for you to find reasons. It's so easy for you to make up stuff. And like I said, stop giving yourself excuses. And this is where people start coming up with excuses. You know, it's basically stories we tell ourselves. And honestly, that's where most people stop because they're trying different ways to convince themselves. And they start giving reasons like, I'll start when this project is done. Or, you know, I have this big event coming up, so I'll probably start after that. Or, you know, it's like, oh, I just joined the company, so I need some time here. So I'll probably give it like a few years before I think about building something of my own, because that can really wait. I can get around to it later. Or it's like, I'll start after the promotion, or I'll start once I've saved a little more. Again, these are all just stories that don't end. They're all coming from the same place. It's basically excuses that evolve into different things. I say this with confidence because I used to do that every single day. Like right from when I was young, I was very, very clear that I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I wanted to have a business of my own. I wanted to do something in that space, right? And so when I did join Deloitte, I was like, you know what? I might as well give this some time. And then came all these excuses, like I said, until one day I realized that this whole thing is going nowhere. This entire thing was basically like a cycle, and nothing's going to change unless I change. And so you can see that there are numerous factors here when it comes to starting a business. There are strategic decisions you have to make at the personal level. There are some psychological things here for sure. There are also like financial things you have to kind of keep in mind. And so that's actually why I put together this resource, 15 steps in 15 days to build a profitable business or a second source of income, even if you're employed. You can subscribe by hitting the first link in the description. It's completely free. You'll receive the first day's email as soon as you subscribe. So check it out and let me know what you think. So I had 2 things I could do here. I could either give up and fall prey to all those excuses, or decide to actually make time, which honestly you'd be like, where are you going to find time? Because look back at that schedule I mentioned earlier. My days used to start around 9 a.m. which meant that I had to leave from home around 8:30 or so, because every single day was an office. And my days used to end around 8 p.m. or 9 p.m. Sometimes it'll even go on to like 10 or 11 p.m. And so it didn't make sense. So I was like, I have my 9 to 5 or 9 to 8 or whatever. I have two options. Either start focusing on the first half of the day, and I wouldn't even say first half, I'm talking about the first 3 or 4 hours before my day started, or start focusing on the last few hours of the day. And so I chose the former. I started waking up at 5 a.m. and I did something crazy every single day for quite a few months actually. I got to the office by 6. I remember there was no one on the floor. Like I'd walk into my floor and the lights would be either dimmed out or switched off, and there's no one on the floor, because who comes in at 6, right? But it actually helped, because since there was no one on the floor, there was no distraction. And so I sat down and worked for around 2 to 3 hours every single morning, and I worked on my business. Now, if you're wondering what the business was about, it was basically an F&B, a food and beverage business that I started while I was employed at Deloitte. You can check out this video where I go into the details and nitty-gritty of how I started. And so coming back to the story, I'd walk into my haunted floor around 6 a.m. because there was no one there, and I'd get to work and I'd wait for the clock to strike 7. And that's because the cafeteria coffee shop would only open around 7 a.m. And that's when I'd grab a huge mug of coffee, one of those massive mugs, and it would take me around 10 minutes, and then I'm back to work again. And so by 9:15, I'd switch gears and prep for my day job. Literally from 6 to 7 and about 7:15 to 9:15 is when I had deep, intentional, dedicated, undisturbed work. And the more I did this, I realized that whether my work day at Deloitte went amazing or completely fell apart, it didn't really matter anymore, because I'd already taken care of the most important thing first thing in the morning. And because I'd already chipped away this entrepreneurial venture, my day was already a success, before the rest of the world could hijack my day. And just doing that for a few weeks turned into a rhythm, and that rhythm kind of turned into an identity. So weekdays were about survival and keeping momentum, but because I was seeing feedback and actually seeing progress with my venture, my weekends, that's when I actually tripled down. Longer work sessions, strategic thinking, product building, and of course I had to carve out time with my family for Apurva, my wife, in-laws. And so there were certain parts of my weekends where I had off time, but I also started figuring out and finding different opportunity windows where I could, like I said, triple down and sit and do deep intentional work. And slowly, again, because I was seeing progress, I stopped seeing this as a side hustle. And I think that mindset shift has stuck with me even to this date. Like, this was just who I was now, someone who actually builds or creates. This actually leads into compounding and the kind of results I started seeing with my business. Because at the end of the day, if you adopt that belief or you adopt that identity that you're a builder or an entrepreneur, then it's so much easier for you to show up on a daily basis. And so after about 4 to 5 months of showing up like this, I started seeing actual real results. And wasn't like explosive, crazy overnight success or something, but I noticed that there was consistent money coming in. And just chipping away at it, the business eventually made as much as my Deloitte salary. And mind you, I was getting paid pretty well. And that's when I actually knew it was time to quit, because I had a milestone in my head, and one was that I had to save off and earmark a certain amount of money for a rainy day or an emergency fund. But the other part was knowing when do I need to kind of hand in my papers. And so I had set the milestone of basically making the exact same amount I made from Deloitte from my business. And finally I decided the day had come. And so when I did resign, I remember during the notice period, I had a couple of partners and MDs who I'd worked with in the past. A couple of them that I was working with at the moment asked me, which competitor poached you? And I said, no one, I'm just building my own thing. Also at that point, I think I'd had enough of consulting. Like, working 12-hour days takes a toll on you. And so it all kind of culminated during that particular period. And when I did tell these partners this, because I was trying to be candid and let them know, 2 of them actually offered to invest in me as well. They said, you know what, if you need help with the business, because it seems like a very intriguing idea, let us know, because we'd love to invest in it. But that was just the minority, right? The other leaders, most of them told me that I'd always have a place at Deloitte if I wanted to come back. And honestly, that helped a lot because then I kind of had a plan B or the safety net. So let's say nothing worked with my venture after going all in, I could always come back and kind of pick up where I left off. But the fact that I actually had the choice to quit and work on something of my own was all because I had those lonely mornings. It was all because of those sacrifices. It was because of the actual work. But again, the part I want to focus on is that I was still delivering or maybe even over delivering at work. It wasn't just something I decided to half-ass. So like I mentioned earlier, the kind of work I was doing, I used to still show up at 9:30 for my calls. I used to still try and over deliver and do whatever I could possibly do with the job. The number of hours that I was contributing to the role didn't really change, right? Because like I mentioned earlier, the schedule still started at 9:30 and ended at whatever time. But the fact that no one worked during those first 4 or 5 hours in the morning, like early morning, of course, like who in their right mind is going to wake up at like 4 or 5 and work, I don't know, consulting deliverable. And so the fact that no one worked during that time, and now when I look back, I think like that was the best window for me to actually work on my venture. And so this actually brings me to the trap that most people fall into. That particular moment where you have a choice or you have actually seen what your business can become is the moment that most people never see. It's because you need to consistently show up. It's not because they're not smart. It's not because they're not talented. I would even argue it's because they're probably overthinking things and constantly trying to build narratives and excuses in their heads. And that's like the biggest reason that holds most people back. It's basically because most people are stuck at either 0 or 0.1. You know, even getting to like this whole journey of going 0 to 1 with starting a business, most people are just stuck at 0 because they're constantly trying to, you know, come up with excuses, try to figure out ways that they can't make something happen. But if you stick with it and actually do things focusing on the non-negotiables of what it takes to run a business, then it's inevitable that you'll actually start seeing results. So most people never start, or they start and stop soon after, or they just wait for, I don't know, that perfect time, those reasons we mentioned earlier. And so they keep blaming the job, the commute, the boss. I still have people who tell me the same thing. Like right now, I have a lot of people reaching out who need help with building a business. And the first thing they tell me, which is almost like a limiting belief or productive procrastination or just reasons you're trying to give and weave so that, you know, you can convince your conscience, is that I just don't have enough time. But honestly, you don't need more time. What you need is a rhythm, a reason, a decision, a system, right? And most importantly, you need to stop negotiating with yourself every morning. Like you don't want to start convincing yourself to show up and do something. Like I told you in my story, the whole thing changed when I started adopting that identity. And so for you to actually adopt that identity, you need to see results. And for you to see results, you need to be in the game. For you to be in the game, it's like the quote goes, you need to be in the arena. And so if you're waiting for things to calm down, the harsh truth is they won't. Like nothing is going to change. Like those reasons that I used to tell myself right out of college, those reasons still apply today. Like I can always find a reason to not do the work, and most people are smart enough to come up with reasons and convince themselves. You don't need like full days in a week. You don't need permission. What you just need is focused 60 to 90 minutes every single day and the commitment to show up. And this might sound rosy and, you know, amazing after the fact, but what I really went through that time was a very weird phase. Yes, I started making enough money to replace, you know, what I was getting paid from Deloitte, but I had to kind of build a team around it, right? So I went months after that without drawing a salary and actually learning the ropes of what it takes to scale a business. And there were days back then where I was almost like depressed. I'd feel shitty that others are kind of moving forward. And here I was barely, you know, like getting paid. But I'm trying to build something where most days nothing's happening. But now when I look back, I'm like, I wouldn't have it any other way. Because the kind of things I learned in that 1.5 years of running my first business has completely changed the person I've become today. And that whole identity shift and the way I approach work now because I've had to go back to a day job a few years later when I moved to Canada. And we'll talk about that in the next video. But that same mindset kind of carried over. And I think once you see the other end or the other side of the equation, you can't go back. That's just my honest take. Or at least that's what I've experienced. And yeah, I'm hoping that my story helped in some form or the other. Because like I mentioned at the beginning of the video, whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. If this resonated, subscribe below, because in the next video, I'll walk you through the exact system I used to stay consistent even on days when I had zero motivation. It's not really productivity hacks, not really theory. It's the real system that worked for me, especially after I moved to Canada and I had to go back to a day job. Watch out for the next video, and I'll see you on the next one.